Hello, I'm Steve Savlov. I'm your host for our program called Welcome to My Home. And today we're interviewing Sam Shlitz, and he lives here with his wife Janet. And you were born in Moldova.
Yes, I was born in Moldova.
Okay.
At the time when I was born, it was called Moldavian Soviet Socialist Republic. That was back in 1980, and obviously Soviet Union was strong and doing well, I think. This is where I was born.
Okay. What was it like growing up in where you were in Moldova?
I thought it was fine because I did not know what to compare it to.
Okay.
Growing up, had a childhood and brainwashed since I was born.
Uh-huh.
And when I started to grow up, I started to understand that maybe there's some other world out there.
Right. When you say brainwashed, what does that mean?
Well, brainwashed means indoctrinated with the idea of the government, of the system that you live in. Lenin was our God and in the way of life, obviously the best in the world, and we are the luckiest children to be alive on this earth.
So when did you find out it wasn't that way?
When I grew up, when I became an adult, per se, I started to get snippets of information from here and there, and obviously I started to think about it. We didn't have a whole lot of sources to go by, but from the letters of relatives that were leaving, from some newspapers that somehow got in and under the table, and you read these articles. So I started to learn that there is a different life.
So how would you describe your childhood?
I would say the childhood was bright and nice, and going to school, no worries about anything. I mean, our family was well-to-do. We had food. We were going on vacation, so we had a pretty decent life. Of course, this is all material things, but everything else came when I started to understand that there is a little bit more that maybe we deserve and I deserve.
So how old were you when you started school?
I started school at 7, yes, and my first language that I was talking was Moldavian, which is Romanian. But my uncle and my aunt, they were a little older. They insisted that my parents send me to a Russian school because otherwise I would be limited only to the republic I was living in. So I went to the Russian school, and from there I was able to go further my studies somewhere else.
So did you like school? Was it?
Oh, I loved school, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I loved
So you look
school.
forward to it?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. So after, let's say, grammar school or elementary school, you went to high school, I guess?
Yes, I went to high school.
In the same town?
In the same town, yes.
Okay. And what was that like? What was high school like for you?
Well, it was a high school, like any school here around here. I mean, we had different teachers. In high school, we had teachers that were teaching language and literature. Another teacher was math. Another teacher was chemistry and physics, and so on and so forth.
Did you have a favorite subject?
I was very strong in math and science.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, chemistry I loved. I was pretty good at language as well, but you know how you always, when you think, I knew in my early childhood that I wanted to be an engineer.
Oh, okay.
So, and because that was, I was interested more in science.
Were there any activities in high school that you participated in?
Oh, sure. It's a little different than here. We were pioneers. That's like the younger brothers of the communists, and maybe somewhat similar to Boy Scouts here. Okay, yeah, we had activities by going in and cleaning up the town, for example, or collect some metal debris, went maybe help some elderly people. Okay, this was one of the things that we were doing.
What did you do with your friends?
What did I do with my friends?
Yeah.
We played soccer, very popular back there. Volleyball, basketball. Did not know anything about American football or baseball. And yeah, like kids playing, like running around and till late night. Nobody was looking for us. Nobody was worried that anything is going to happen to us.
Right.
So I remember my childhood as a very happy childhood.
Yeah.
Yes.
What did your father do for a living?
My father was a specialist in furs. Furs, he was like an agent for the government-controlled, of course, organization, that he was supposed to buy and sort out the furs from farmers, from villagers, from hunters, so on and so forth. And there was, most of all I remember, there was like the hair of sheep. There was like tons of it. I mean, they were kind of rinsing it, washing it, and then packing it and send it away. And I remember rabbits, I remember wolves, fox, and then more expensive, you have these minks and so on and so forth. This is what he was doing.
Okay. And then after high school, you went to university?
Yes, after high school I went to actually it was called an institute, a polytechnical institute in Western Ukraine. The city was called Lvov, Lvov. The Polish people call it LWOW, and the reason for this is because Lvov belonged to Poland, and before that it was Austro-Hungary, and it was one of the biggest institutes in the country, about 30,000 students, and it was very well known, and I wanted to go to a well-known school because they had real good education.
So did you studied engineering?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I studied civil engineering and I was specializing in water and wastes.
Okay.
That was my specialty, or over here says like major, my major.
Did you meet your wife in university or?
No, I met my wife at my cousin's wedding, and she was finishing school. She was somewhere in the 9th or 10th grade, and she had plans to go somewhere deep Russia to a medical school. But since we got more serious and we were talking about getting married, I convinced her that it would be best if she takes engineering, so at least we're going to have a common profession, so we would have more in common.
Yeah, yeah. So you had a couple children?
Yes.
And how many?
2 children. We had our son in 1974. That was 2 years after we got married.
Right.
At that time I was in the army.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was drafted right after I completed the institute. I was drafted into the army and I served for 2 years as a officer in the Soviet army. And when I came home, my son was already over a year old.
Oh,
Well, I was able to come and see him when he was
Right.
just born.
right.
And then after I was demobilized or whatever, discharged. Yeah.
And you had a daughter.
I had a daughter, yes, in 1977 at the end of the year. There's 4 years apart between them. And that's it. No more
Okay.
kids.
No more kids.
That's right.
Okay. So, how did you come to United States? What process did you go through to immigrate to the United States?
Well, the process is the same everywhere. Was the same everywhere throughout Soviet Union. The government did not want people to leave, and they would do everything possible not to allow. So it is like over here they say insurance companies. The first answer is they deny, and then they approve. Okay, so you put in an application that you want to leave, and then you go through all different processes of, you have appointments where they ask you straight questions and they intimidate you. They say, well, why would you want to leave? Are you hungry? You don't have enough food? You don't have enough this or that? And you kind of afraid. You don't know what would be the right answer. So I kind of figured out, and I said, no, I love everything. And I would always be a friend of Russia and Soviet Union. I just would like to exercise my human rights. And as far as I know, I mean, Soviet Union signed a agreement to provide human rights for their people. So I would like to see how life is back, I do not know, maybe United States or Western Europe. So you don't have a definition where you want to go? Say, not really, but more than likely I'll probably go to Israel. And so, why Israel? Do you have anybody there? I say, yeah, I have an uncle. I have an uncle there. And they say, well, you know that we would not let you go because your closest relatives are here. Your mom, your dad. I say, yeah, I understand. So they say, your parents have to leave first. And then if they invite you, then maybe. Well, that was a long process. It took about 4 years. But finally, it happened. They gave us 2 weeks notice, and we had to leave the country. And of course, they told us that they will take away our citizenship, because I was kind of playing. I would say, well, I'll go take a look. If I don't like it, I might come back. And they say, if you leave, you cannot come back because you want to lose your Soviet citizenship. So I say, okay, be it, fine.
So where did you go after leaving Moldova?
Well, everybody who was leaving on an Israeli invitation had a specific destination. That was to Austria, to Vienna. So we ended up in Vienna, and over there we were met by Israeli representatives. So I think the name was Sochnut or something. They were asking us where we're going and who we have here and there. So, I didn't have no reason to lie. So I said, yes, I have an uncle, I have my mother and father there, but we want to go to United States. Obviously, they were not too happy about this, but, we know our rights. So they were trying to, squeeze us, and we said, no, we want to go there.
So how did that happen?
How did this happen? We just got our documents back from them because they collected when we came in. And they helped us to get on a train, and they were intimidating us, telling us that, okay, this train is going to take you to Rome, Italy. There is an American embassy there. You'd have to go and apply to get a status in the United
Right.
States. So we went over there. Of course, all the expenses were paid, and we ended up in Rome, Italy, and a bus took us to a hotel they had contracted, and we lived there, had a room, and they was feeding us. And then they told us that the process is going to take maybe a month, maybe more, and so we have to go and find a rental somewhere. You know, and they gave us a couple locations.
Right.
One of them, Ostia in Rome, and another one was Ladispoli, where a lot of immigrants from all over.
So how long were you there?
We ended up being for 8 weeks.
8 weeks.
Yeah,
And then you flew to the United States
that is correct.
and landed in what, New York?
We landed in New York. We had a representative meeting us. He was from HIAS, H-I-A-S. I understand this is an international Jewish organization. They paid for everything, for our flight, and they mentioned that they would really appreciate if we pay them back when we be able to,
Right.
so they can help
Other people.
the other people. And from New York, we spent the night in a hotel. We took a flight and went to Houston, Texas. Apparently, Jewish Family Service or Jewish Federation requested the family, and they wanted a family with engineering degrees or something
Sure.
of that nature, higher education. And we fit the profile. We came and they picked us up and took us to an apartment that they rented for us. A refrigerator full of food, and representative. Of course, nobody was speaking Russian. Everybody
Right.
was speaking English. So
How long were you in Houston?
we ended up living there for 6 years,
6 years.
Yes.
And then went where?
and then we moved to California
Oh, okay.
because we had a friend that I was in the army with, and he was in the United States 2 years, a couple of years prior to us coming. And unfortunately, he was not a wealthy person at all, even though he was a doctor. But at that time, he was getting prepared to pass the board,
Right.
and he offered to borrow the money. He needed
Right.
like $10,000.
Yeah.
And I said, no, we're going to start in Houston, and when we feel we're able to make the move, we'll move.
Okay. So you came, let's say, to United States. You worked as an engineer, I'm sure.
Yes.
And then you, in California, you eventually ended up here.
Yes, I eventually ended up here. Well, in Houston, we ended up in Houston only because the economy over there was better than the rest of the country.
Oh, okay.
There was a recession.
Yeah.
If you recall, there was end
Right.
of Carter's
Right.
presidency, and Reagan took over. Yeah, well, we made the right pick.
Yeah.
We both got jobs and bought a house and this and that. So it was a good start.
So what brought you to Laguna Woods?
To Laguna Woods, that happened like many years later. I mean, we ended up in Diamond Bar because we both, with my wife, were working in Riverside, and the friend that I had lived and lives in San Fernando Valley.
Okay.
So Diamond Bar happened to be the middle point.
Right.
So we settled in Diamond Bar, ended up buying a house, and lived there for about 27 years
Wow.
until I decided to sell my business. Well, I left engineering after 2 years working in California
Yeah.
into my own business. I was fixing cars after accidents, and ended up staying there for about 30 years.
Right.
And when I decided to retire, sold my business, we sold the house and moved to Laguna Woods.
So how did you find out about Laguna Woods?
That's an interesting story. I was sure that we would not be able to afford the house. Because my goal was to use the equity in the house that we had in Diamond Bar to buy a property where we can live in retirement free and clear. And obviously knowing the prices over here are much higher than in Diamond Bar. So anyways, but I told my wife, and she was working in Mission Viejo all these years, if you find a property that we can buy for equity, I will move. So somehow she came across Laguna Woods. Somebody told her about it,
Right.
and we did a little research, and we figured out that we can afford.
So you've been here about 5 years?
5.5.
5.5. And let me see, what activities are you participating in Laguna Woods? Any particular ones?
You occasionally go to the pool.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I thought I'd be going to the gym, but since, on Medicare, you're eligible for Silver Snickers or whatever, they give you free membership to any club you want.
Right.
So I say now with 24-hour fitness, and this is where I'm going.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, we belong to a couple clubs here.
Uh-huh. And does your wife participate in any activities here?
Well, she does not because she's still working full time.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, she's working.
Yeah.
But we occasionally, like once a month, we would go like to California Club or Baby Boomers. Then you have a couple other clubs. Yeah, the dancing,
Right. And where are your children?
Our children are here within driving distance. Our son lives in Studio City, and our daughter lives in Riverside County. It's called Harupa Valley.
Right.
They just recently bought a brand new house there.
Oh, good.
And and I have 3 grandchildren there with my daughter.
Wonderful.
And they are pretty happy.
Good. Well, we're kind of coming to the end of our time for my getting to know you.
Yes.
But as we usually do in Welcome to My Home, we usually partake in some kind of food from your country,
Okay.
Moldova. And we're going to take a little break here and go over to your dining room and partake in this delicious food.
Sounds good.
So here we are at Sam's dining room table, and we have some food from Moldova, and perhaps you could tell us what is that we have in front of us.
Okay, well, this is the main staple. Everybody who ever lived in Soviet Union knew that Moldova is famous with their mamaliga. And this is a mamaliga, which is actually a cornbread just made to a semi-hard consistency. Then you cut it up, serve hot, warm, and with all kinds of condiments. I mean, for example, over here we have brinza, which is feta cheese, sour cream, and garlic butter, melted butter with garlic. That is, I keep it on the stove so it wouldn't get hard.
Right.
And you just eat it piece by piece and dip it and eat it. And some people really like it. For example, me.
For example, you.
Okay.
So do you have it for breakfast, lunch, or dinner? Or
Well,
both?
you can have it for any time you want. You can make an omelet with it. You can use it as a cereal. You break it up in pieces and put milk on the top and eat it like that. Put sugar if you want it a little sweet. Possibilities are limitless.
So you said also that you put eggs on top of it?
Oh yeah, you can make an omelet with it. Yes.
Yeah.
And
Very
it
nice.
is very delicious.
Very nice.
Well, another staple that Moldova was famous for, and probably still is the wine. They have a very favorable location geographically, where they have a lot of rolling hills, and they were growing a lot of grapes. So we always had grapes, and they supplied these grapes to the rest of the country, to the rest of the Soviet Union, and made some wine. Obviously, the technology of winemaking was like old times, maybe 200 years ago, is still not to the standard whatever is made here in the United States or France or whatever. But they had a couple of good wines that normal people probably would not be able to get. They were made for the higher up government.
I was going to ask you
Yes.
about what keeps you busy here in Laguna Woods.
About 2 or 3 years ago, I decided to start helping the local residents with transportation. So I started to transport people to airports. I never realized that people that are in retirement, they travel. And apparently they travel more than normal Americans, 3-4 times a year, some
Right.
people do. So yeah, I transport them to LAX, to John Wayne Airport, Ontario Airport, Port of San Pedro or Long Beach. So
Right.
wherever people need to go, I prefer long distance, of course. I do not do across the street to the local hospital.
Thank you so much for sharing your story and this food, and we really appreciate your opening your home to us.